This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the G-Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a G-Spot Podcast with Katie Silcox.
All right, everybody. Hi, welcome to the G-Spot. I am so excited, as usual. I mean, we've been having some incredible guests lately, as you guys know, and this one is no exception to that. We've got the beautiful, the wonderful Vanessa Durant here. She is not only a graduate of the Shakti School, she's also one of our teachers now here at Shakti School. She has a master in clinical social work. She is an amazing healer woman. She's a yoga teacher, Reiki master, psychotherapist that focuses on something that I'm really, really passionate about, which is attachment and trauma-focused therapy. And she does so many things, but I want to focus really on those for today. So Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you so much, Katie. I am so excited to be here and talk and about all the things that I love to talk about that I nerd out on every day of my life.
That is why you were on my short list of people to get on the G-Spot. So I think we'll just kick it off by saying, I'll just share this personally. Like Vanessa was a student in the Shakti School, and then she came and did a training with me live back when those things happened in Virginia. And I just looked at the back row of the room, and there's this like gorgeous goddess woman looking at me with these bright, big eyes. And she just started talking about being very intuitive. And later I found out that she was this amazing attachment-based therapist. And I was like, oh my God, this totally makes sense. So that was my first real experience of you, just seeing you as a magical creature in the back row.
Thank you. That's so sweet. And I remember, at that live training, going through that similar process of, whoa, I could just feel that goddess energy that you have and that you emanate. And I remember, just saying that to you, and it was just a beautiful connection. And, this is what today's about. It is about connection.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you so much for those kind words.
I mean, I think our listeners will agree, like look, all beings, as you well know, all beings have the core root of being beings of light. But there are some of us that have incarnated on this planet that really are called to grow and to be that light. And I think, and then the other folks, God bless their souls, are just more covered and detached from that light. And I think when we meet one another, light meets light. And for me, that's what all of the teachers are at Shakti School is light meets light. And then so also our students, it's like we recognize one another, and you kind of can like exhale and feel like you're connected. So let's just dive into that layer of connection. So for people who have no idea, when most folks hear therapy, they think I'm sitting with a therapist in a room and we're going to talk about our problems. Tell me, as a therapist, what are these cutting edge methodologies that I know you're so passionate about, and maybe give like a brief definition of some of them?
Yeah. So, I'm trained in a bunch of different things, and that's because at the core, I am a learner. I'm a student for life, and I love to meld all of these different things that I study into who I am and the presence that I provide, the patients that I serve. And, so there's a lot of different avenues for healing, but they all, at the end of the day, you can get trained in a lot of different techniques. It's your presence that makes the difference. Mm-hmm. And so, really all of these different methodologies are tools in a toolbox for circumventing all of those different layers that we, you know, that we develop as we age. And so I like to practice from that brain-based nervous system perspective, because that's at the core of who we are. It's our brain, it's our nervous system that dictates how we talk, you know, who we connect with, how we respond to adversity. And so some of those things that I'm trained in is I'm trained in brain spotting, which is a form of, you know, the mantra with brain spotting is where you look affects how you feel. And which is so true. And
by the way, if I look away, I'm taking notes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look away to process. Yeah.
Brain spotting. Can we say that again? Brain spotting mantra one more time.
Yeah, I call it mantra in my language, right? That's probably not what your traditional brain spotter therapist would say, but that where you look affects how you feel. And it was really developed and devised out of that notion. And it was really developed after EMDR, which is another form of therapy that is, you know, meant to desensitize those parts of traumatic memories or acute things or even general things. And so in brain spot, and I'm trained in both and I love them both. But in brain spotting, I love it because it's so organic. And basically, you know, we store things in our brain and in our nervous systems, and where you look, you know, even now as I'm talking, it's hard to be here, you know, like looking straight at you. But, you know, as I look around, those different parts are, you know, oriented to the subcortical brain. And in the subcortical brain is where we keep some of these things. And so through brain spotting, I help people connect with different, you know, with an intention that they're working on. I help them connect with whatever it is that they're struggling in life. And it can be something very overarching, like, you know, I just feel this like anxiety in my chest right now. And so I connect that to a place in their visual field. And that may be the 45 minutes to hour of our session. And
can I ask for a question for clarification? Yeah. So when you say where you look affects how you feel, you actually mean that quite literally.
It's very, yes.
Because in the spiritual sense, I can understand like what you focus on grows, but no, you mean literally what you look at. Yeah. Okay. I'm freaking out because how many of us are looking at screens?
Yes. Yeah. Right. No, I mean that in a concrete way. And you will notice this. I mean, I'm trained to notice this in people, you know, but sometimes when you're talking about a specific subject, your eye gaze goes to a certain direction. Right. And so basically what we're doing in brain spotting is we're slowing that process down and we're honoring it. Mm-hmm. And so brain spotting is an attachment focused intervention because it requires 100% attunement with my client, you know, tuning in and honoring them for where they are and letting them be where they are. And I, as the guide them through that process because that's where my area of expertise is. And so I accept them for where they are. I see them for where they are. I give them permission to be where they are. And we don't do that enough in our society. You know, this is why the crux of working with a highly qualified therapist is forming a safe relationship with another person that allows you to be who you are. And so in brain spotting, you know, we find a spot in your visual field and the therapist who is certified and trained in doing that will guide you, you know, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour processing on that specific thought. And often what will happen is you will have discomfort arise in your body. You will have lucid thoughts, memories pop up. And so that therapist is trained to guide you through all of that. And so go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just want to, for clarification, when you mentioned the visual cortex related to the part of your brain that actually holds memory, am I correct? So
yes,
when we work
with part of the brain, yes.
So when we work with that movement of the eyes, that explains so much around EMDR and many, like I'm very steeped in somatic experiencing where you're asked to really orient the eyes. So this is making a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so brain spotting is really a form of somatic based therapy as well. And EMDR also has somatics in it, but brain spotting slows it down, where EMDR keeps your eye movement, gaze moving, or the bilateral brain stimulation moving. And so the founder of Brain Spotting, was trained in EMDR and noticed, wait a minute, when the eyes are moving, I see more of this in this one position. What if we even slowed this down even more?
Yeah.
And so there's, EMDR is also, a brain-based therapy. And I have found with my own people that I serve that it's really great for desensitizing something big.
Right.
I do use it with children as well. I work with people across the lifespan, and I do brain spotting and EMDR with both. But brain spotting is so organic, and I love that because that's who I am. I am an organic person that trusts the process and the flow of what will happen. So there's, those are some of the therapies that I do, but there's also so much power in the arts. And, I do Santre therapy, play therapy, art therapy, as Ayurveda, which really confirms all of these other aspects of everything else. So
Vanessa, when just to backtrack a little bit before we dive into more, can you tell us a little bit about why and how you got into this field yourself?
Yeah. So, and thank you for that question. I love that question because it so intersects with our conversation today. When I was the age of 3, I remember, it is just one of my favorite memories of all time. I remember my aunts in a circle around me, and we were dancing and I was singing, and I was the center of their universe in that moment. And I remember one of them asking me, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" And I don't know how I had words to this at the age of 3, but I said, "I'm going to be a psychiatrist."
Wow.
And that has that memory has stayed so ingrained in me and who I am. And so from the age of 3, I knew I was going to be a healer. And that was my life path. And so I developed that part of me since I was a child. And when I was in high school, I couldn't believe that I wasn't understanding more about psychology. And so, I took it upon myself to do all this reading, college book reading on psychology. And the more that I learned, the more that I realized that, the word psychiatrist for me at that time was the word for healer. And so, I sought this from that time, and I embodied that part of me. And so the very first time that I was receiving the very first Reiki class that I went, when I was being trained in Reiki, which also happened very serendipitously, another person who saw my light and I saw theirs, and it just led to this, you need to do this. And, this is a very sacred story. And so I recognize that this is going to be broadcasted. And so I hold that in sacredness. I have to just say that because some people may hear that and just say, "Oh my gosh, that sounds so loony." But
our listeners are used to sacred.
Yeah, that's right.
Sacredness and looniness. Yes.
Yeah. And so her name is Barb, and she's someone that is just definitely, she has changed my life. And so my Reiki mentor, Reiki master, said to me, "I had one of your ancestors," as she was giving me some Reiki and attuning me to the energy, the life healing energy of Reiki. She said, "I had one of your ancestors come through, and she is really wanting to honor your healing powers and your ability to be a healer, and she's passing that down." And in all of her years, that had never happened with her, with a student. And so for her, it was a very, it struck her as a moment. And that's really what I needed to hear to delve deeply into my work. At that time, I was already done with graduate school, and I was approaching healing from that very rational place. And so it changed my life because it opened up this whole other intuitive, holistic way of healing. And so that's how I got into this. It was just a matter of meeting other people that mirrored that light that I had to share. and that one person led me to the next person. I just trusted the process. And sometimes people ask me the name of your practice. Where did you get that from? Kindred Tree Healing Center is the name of my group mental health practice that I own. And I intuited that name. One day when I was getting ready to set up shop here in Maryland, it just came to me. The name is Kindred Tree Healing Center. And the more that I sat with that, I realized that honors that attachment, my knowledge of attachment and relationships and connection. And that, if we all view ourselves as tree that is so interconnected to the next thing and to everything, we can, Kindred Tree Healing Center really stands for kindred people healing together. Mm-hmm. And so, Hermann Hesse, he has this beautiful poem on trees. And so that became my mission statement. And so when people, ask, how did you get into this? I was meant for this, since I could talk and could put words into what am I going to do with my life? And, one of those other mantras is to who much is given, much is required.
Oh, I say that one all the time.
Oh, yes. And that's hard.
Yeah, my sister. So I just want to interject and just reflect for the audience. Vanessa and myself both have these really strong stories of Dharma, right? Knowing so clearly what your path is. And there are folks out there that don't. And I think that is also a part of the journey, to really honor that some of us are from the age of 3 clear. When I came out of, as soon as I could talk, I was saying to my mama, I'm the boss and you're the little girl, and it's I was for leadership, but maybe just pausing here and just reflecting the pain that can come from not feeling that deep sense of connection and purpose. And maybe, really just holding, not even saying, oh, here's how you need to figure out your purpose, etc., but just holding space for the fact that everyone might not know that. And that's also okay.
Absolutely. And that's part of my work as a therapist is all, when someone first comes and sees us, even if it's a child, all they know is that they want to feel an inner sense of healing and love and happiness in their life. And they're lost and they don't know how to get there. And they're fed up with how they feel. I don't know where to turn. I don't know how to pick up the pieces. Mm-hmm. And so that is one of we honor that. And what I have witnessed firsthand in the people that I get to serve is that becomes clearer. Your Dharma becomes clearer the more that we peel back the layers and the more that we get in tune with who we are. And when we have a witness, when somebody gets to witness who we are, which is what attachment is.
Yes. So can you say more about, for people that may be listening to the Ghee Spot that have no idea, what is attachment? I know it's a huge topic. Yeah.
I like to say, what I like to say? I like to say that attachment is the science of relationships. Mm-hmm. So we know that Ayurveda is the science of life, right? And attachment really is what, how do we relate to one another? How do we see one another? How do we honor? How do we help meet each other's needs? How do we learn to speak up for our needs? What are our needs? That's what attachment is to me. And that's how we operationalize it. And so, I can get very nerdy with this stuff because this is what I do day in and day out. And so you tell me what else, what about that do you want me to
Yeah. Well, first I want to say I also am a nerd of this stuff, as Vanessa, and we could probably talk for 3 hours or all day, but what has been pivotal for me as a yogini, as a woman of spirit, as a longtime meditator and yogini and Ayurvedic practitioner, I know is at the heart of your heart as well. And that is this excitement of the revelation that I don't have to do it alone. And I meditated for 20 years religiously every morning, and my issues didn't go away, and then I found attachment, and I have an amazing therapist I work with. And it's like, oh my God, like this is so incredible. And she keeps reminding me, we heal in relationship. We heal, these things got laid down in relationship and they get rewired in relationship. So speaking to that, but also it doesn't negate in any way the yogic meditative path, because also you're learning how to have a relationship with yourself through having a quality relationship with someone else.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. 100% on all your words. So what I say is healing is relational. And in an age right now where we are being fed so much information via social media, and we try at Kindred Tree Healing Center not to contribute to this.
Really?
We are.
Can you say more about this? Because this is the hot topic of the day and something that I've been relatively quiet about, but I feel so called to start to speak on. Why don't you start?
Yeah. So healing is relational. So we cannot do our healing based off of a social media post. So, self-help is there is a place, and self-help is wonderful, and it can empower us, but self-help is not everything. Healing is everything. The relationship is everything. Healing is relational. And so social media has made it easy to access a lot of self-help resources. This
Information.
you're suffering. Yes, information. This is what you're struggling with. Do this.
Yeah.
Or even like a beautiful quote. That's thought-provoking. All of that is great. And sometimes what I see day in and day out is that people take that very literally and they start applying it. And then it's almost like it feels like tires, like tires screeching, like I'm moving forward and I'm doing these things and I still don't feel good, like what you were saying. And so, really in reality, healing is relational. And so maybe some of that information is helpful for starting the healing process, but it can't be done via a beautiful Instagram post,
Or even the converse of that, which is what we really are like. It's in the realm of thought for me a lot, because also it can't be done through a negative social media post or commentary. And so we really dance the dance of, and I'm leaning more towards no engagement at all, because we get comments that are just like passive aggressive, patronizing, or downright bullying. And I'm sitting back and going, I'm not going to engage this, but at some point we have to stand up and say, education is great and we can learn so much through social media, but it is not going to do the work of healing, which must be done in person, in relationship. And I am now beginning to really think, Vanessa, that perhaps even harm is being done, albeit through maybe good intentions. I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because what I'm concerned about is people, even good-minded folks, are using social media in a way that's actually preventing them from doing their own healing. And I'm calling out all of us on that. Like, if there's so much, this could be a whole 2-hour podcast, but what are your thoughts on engaging?
Yes. And that is, there is so much nuance that gets lost when you're behind a keyboard. And the same thing goes for texting. Texting is also a little stressful because, you, and this is why we have emojis, right? So that you can kind of imagine a face with what you're saying. But, you're right on with everything. And so when you put something out there, and this is why I also I'm in the same, place that you are, how can I put this out there in a way that if it has engagement, it can be a conversation or just a via of support, maybe no words needed, just support. I hear you, I see your words. And how do we walk that balance of like showing what we do and who we are, and also that some of these very deep discussions actually happen, face to face, even online face to face. Like, I love that when we're recording this podcast, I get to see your face and connect with you. I think that makes all the difference. So that's really kind of where I am with that. And it does, like, I am, one of the things that my graduate program taught me is they is they drilled into us ethical dilemmas at nauseum. And so I always go to a place of, is this an ethical dilemma? You know, some of the silver great things of social media, does it also become an ethical dilemma towards for other things?
So
And
what's an example of that, Vanessa?
so, you know, what you're saying with, you know, like you're well intentioned and you want to get information out there. And sometimes you're getting information out there that maybe you haven't even interwoven into your life. And it can be so easy to do a post that looks beautiful and has really pretty words. And, you know, but you also don't, you know, it's hard to embody that because we know that healing is a day in and day out thing, and it's hard and it has layers and it's relational. And so, you know, where is the ethics of the caring, right? Ethics of Caring is one of my favorite books.
And for yourself in that process, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing up, have I myself integrated and processed this? Because I feel like we're being asked, especially as leaders, myself included, I'm sure you as well, to like come forward and make these big proclamations about your belief systems. And you're like, well, these are issues and concerns I am literally interfacing with for the first time. And I want to do it so passionately, but like, how to do it in a way where it does feel integrated in my body. So I'm not responding from a place of being bullied by my community in a way, or like the ethical dilemma of not yet having those words digested. And I think to just to give everyone time to integrate and digest, we're not afforded that real luxury in an age of like instant need and gratification.
Right. Yeah. We thrive off authenticity, you know, and so if there's something that gets put out in there, we would hope that I know that I thrive off of that. And so I can't say something or put my name behind something that I don't feel authentic about. And that includes all of the things that we've been, you know, going through collectively in this pandemic and in our rights and in our civil rights movement that we're going through right now. And so it is, I mean, and I think people feel the authenticity, you know, and so, and this, yeah, I mean, this is it's loaded and there's a lot, and we really could, this is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, we're going to have you back on the show because I do really love and value your opinion. And I think let's just have you back to talk on this, but let's go back to attachment. So let's say someone's hearing about attachment for the first time and they're like, I still don't get it. Like, can you kind of go through in these last 10, 15 minutes that we have, okay, what are these attachment styles? How do they get wired, misfired, and then rewired? And you know, I know everyone's going to write you and you're going to like everyone's going to want to work with you and your team, Vanessa, but like if someone doesn't have that capacity right now, in addition to maybe going through these attachment styles, what can we do today to start to wire in our own healthy attachment just with ourselves and maybe our loved ones?
Yeah. So, you know, the attachment in the sciences, and so I have to honor this other part of me that is very holistic and ancient and mysterious with the modern sciences of attachment. They say attachment begins in infancy when the child is born, and it builds the security that builds, and the relationship is built over time in infancy. I say that attachment begins in the womb. And more studies are starting to confirm this. And it is the relationship that parent has with their child in the womb and where they are. And, you know, because the brain is developing, the brainstem is developing. So what kind of neurochemicals are being paralleled, you know, like there's a parallel process there of whatever is being shown up in the mother, chemically and nervous system wise, it is also something that the child is going through. And so, you know, this is why, you know, one of my areas of expertise is adoption. And so this is why you can, you know, adopt a child at birth and, you know, think that means that, you know, you get to hold the child from, the minute they're born, and they're a newborn. And then years later, you start to see some of these attachment difficulties come up, and you're confused because I gave that child all the security I knew how to give. And so there's more, more of the sciences I hope are starting to confirm this, is that, really it starts in the womb. So this is, makes a lot of space for intentional pregnancies, intentional connection time with that baby that you have inside of you, and also honoring where you are in your process. It doesn't mean that you can't experience stress, right? Because that's part of the human experience, but it's more about how do we cope with this stress, and how do I get support for myself when I have some of this stress, and do I have people around me that are part of that village. And so if we look at this from an evolutionary perspective, we were meant to coexist in tribes and with people. And so really in attachment, we look at it in our Western society, we look at it, parent to child, like this kind of like one-to-one type thing. But evolutionarily, we were actually attached to many people at the same time, and there was many hands in the pot that helped children grow.
Right. So it's not just on mama's watch.
It isn't. And so this is, again, we go back to Kindred People Healing Together, Kindred Tree Healing Center, and so it forms in the context of safety. And if the notion here is that if that child is in relationship with somebody, whether that is a biological parent or adoptive parent or a foster parent or an aunt, uncle, any caregiver, if that child is responded to in a sensitive way, that when they cry, they're responded to in a sensitive way, that they are seen and taken care of. It's not just the feeding. And that was one of the biggest discoveries in attachment theory with John Bowlby, is that, he purported that I don't think it is just about feeding your baby. I think that there is more subtleties here that create security. And so the gold standard in a child and in us humans is, for us to feel securely attached. Because and that happens specifically those first 3 years of life, that security builds then. It doesn't mean that if, you had a really traumatic childhood, those first 3 years, that can't happen. It just means that that's when really we get hardwired for this sense of security. And so that's what is referred to in the attachment world as secure attachment. And I almost feel like, because of our time, it's better for us to just focus on that, because I don't want to do a disservice to all of the other attachment styles. That is a whole nother, time.
So I guess like a way of synthesizing it and maybe giving some practicality. So I love this idea of earned security. Like you said, like just because you had traumatic past doesn't mean you can't learn and rewire. And so I understand this as earned security. It's like, okay, I've worked for it, and in a way, it makes you a more compassionate being. And all of us have attachment issues, from my experience. We're all dabbling in some realm of that. So, what can we do right now, maybe even together, to begin to build that feeling of safety in our bodies, which really is how secure attachment lays itself down?
Yes. Yeah. And so when we're feeling, when a child is not feeling okay, they give signals to their caregivers that they're not okay. You can notice this by the gaze that they have, by their body orientation and expressions, by crying or even before crying, other noises. And so if we correlate that to the here and now,
okay,
that is, so that's how it shows up in babies, and that's how it gets built over time. A very attuned caregiver notices those things in response to those things. Not every time. Again, it's not about perfection. I need to make that really clear. It's not about perfect mothering, but it is about doing this enough of the time. And research actually has what that number is. And enough of the time means 30%.
Oh, that's not too bad.
that leaves room for failure, right? But there's also research also talks about, well, how do we repair when for that 70% where we're not attuned? And so if we relate that now to the here and now, so that's my baby talk, and I can go all day and long about that. But you're asking about the here and now, us adults, and how do we embody this sense of security within our own selves so that we can do it with other people. Part of that is witnessing ourselves, being a witness, tending to where am I and how do I feel? And where do I feel that in my body? And oh my gosh, I'm having like for me, during this pandemic and everything that's happening and all of the abusive things that we've been witness to by the person that has been in charge the last 4 years, I just talked about this the other day, like our hearts are taking a beating. It is really right now about heart-centered medicine, and my heart has taken a beating, and I feel that, right? Right in this region. And so part of building security is just seeing it, witnessing it, honoring it, and then what can I do to give myself what I need? And so for me, it's like, okay, I need more heart-centered medicine. I need more tokens of love. I need to honor the love that I see in other people. I need to honor the love that I see in myself. I need to make sure that the people that I hang out with can mirror this for me.
Right.
That I can feel safe to explore these things with them, that I can talk about this stuff that's weighing heavy on my heart.
Yeah.
And that may sound easy as I say it, but it's actually really hard. And so we build a security within ourselves as adults because we have fully developed brains that can do this abstract, complex process, right? That's all in the prefrontal cortex of our brains. And so as we translate it to us adults, how do we do this? That is how we can do it. And then if I'm doing this and I keep going back to the same place, and if I'm able to, locate a therapist that can help me further into this and has the area of expertise into this, then that's what we have to do. But
yeah. And I want to just pause there and just say that is one of the things I want to make sure comes through the thread today. Is one of the things, often painful lessons I've learned in the yoga community is so much content can come up, and yoga teachers and yoga students are not qualified and equipped to come to the aid of that traumatic material. I myself have dedicated the past 3, 4, 5 years of my life to understanding that, to become better equipped at that. But we are not Vanessa. We do not have, a qualification in this. And so for everyone out there listening, if you can use a therapist, get that resource, it can be, and invest that money, it can be the most important piece that might be missing from your spiritual journey. And gurus and spiritual teachers usually are just not qualified to do that work.
Yeah, the heart is there, right? That heart of the work is there, and but the knowing the bounds, and the reason also for this is because I say that, and there's people right now that are scared to death to honor themselves, and they're scared to death to sit there and connect to where is this in my body, and I don't want to go there because that feels so scary. It feels so big and it feels too scary, and so. And that's important to just kind of know. I mean, I most of the people that I get to serve were there at some point. And so that, again, we go back to the healing is relational. So, who you surround yourself with is just as important, because then those peers, those friends can be the people that can also reflect this for you, of maybe it is time to get some more support, or yes, I will give you that hug. You need a hug right now. I'm going to give you a hug. And that's important. That's the love, right? So and so the other thing that's important in all of this is that, being a witness to where we are, and then stepping into some sort of action and making sure that, because we know that attachment is based in physiology, that we tend to our physiology. We tend to that part of us that, just like the baby, we give regulating touch to a baby.
Yeah.
If the baby cries, we very rarely not provide touch.
Right. We don't say, well, let's analyze this experience.
Yeah. So, getting back into the physiology of that, like, do I need to give myself a hug? Do I need to seek that hug? What things can I do to soothe this
Yeah.
response in me?
Well, Vanessa, I feel like, oh my goodness, we're going to have Vanessa back on the show. I know there's so much more we both want to really go into, but I do want to save a moment to just say that people can connect with you and your organization, and we'll be providing the information for that on our show notes. And I know that your website has more than just sessions with you and your ilk, but also resources that people can utilize, and that you're also a teacher at the Shakti School, where we're inviting you to come give actually 3 hours of content on this. So I know people who are listening who are in the Shakti School are going to be really excited about that.
Yeah, I was going to say that when you were asking about the attachment styles, I was like, oh, I go into this and actually 2 3-hour classes that I teach there.
Exactly.
Yeah, where I will be able to actually get into the science of attachment and what does that mean for me, and how, and when we mess up, how do we repair so that we can go back to the security, to the secure place. So and so the other thing is that I guess would be really nice, I can talk about that in right now, is that I just talked about what does security look like. That's what security looks like. But like you said before, there is so many different forms, attachment classifications, which I am trained to provide assessment over. And when I provide that assessment for somebody, it is a long process. It is a long process. I don't diagnose this in 30 seconds. I actually may look at the first 30 seconds of an interaction, but I spend hours looking at 30 seconds of that interaction to see what the subtleties are. And so it is very complicated, but most of the reason that security is so hard is because we're not in that place. Maybe we're more in an anxious place in our attachment style, or more an avoidant place, or more of a disorganized place, or ambivalent place. There's subtleties, and even security has facets of all of those in it, and that is okay, and that is still secure. And again, that is its own other thing, which I do go over, in more depth with some of your students, which has relevance. The reason that I love Ayurveda and how is because if Ayurveda is the science of living and attachment is the science of relationships, the two run together, and Ayurveda honors paying attention to myself.
And the world around me. It's all about, Ayurveda is also the science of relationship, because we begin to understand the qualities of ourselves and everything around us as the same things.
Yes. Yeah. And I love being able to say that to you and to the listeners, because again, I'm in my clinical fields. And so all of this, in my clinical fields may sound, strange, but as we know, the ancient sciences and evolutionarily, we were practicing attachments from the beginning of time.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, I feel so honored to have had you on the Geese Spot. I'm so glad that you're one of our teachers at Shakti School. I just know that I just want to say, I've taken so much from this really brief conversation, but what most was impactful for me and what I'm going to carry throughout my day is, because I'm also a geek who studied all the sciences of the everything from ancient to modern, they're all training us to hold the quality of our attention. So thank you for that nugget.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're welcome. I look forward to coming on and talking more.
Yeah, we're going to set it up. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
फूटे फूल अपन सुखे फूटे फूल